go. All right. All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much again for being here. You are here at Wildlife Wednesday with the Alaska Wildlife Alliance. My name is Kelsey Hansen, and I am the outreach coordinator with Alaska Wildlife Alliance, or AWA. And AWA is a wildlife nonprofit that does work in the state of Alaska to ensure that wildlife are being scientifically and ethically managed. And we host these free Wildlife Wednesdays every month through October through April, excluding December. And we hold them thanks to our members, because without them, we wouldn't be able to do the work that we do and have these free events. So if you are a member and you are attending tonight, we thank you so much. And I'll be talking a little bit more later on about how you can be a member if that is something that interests you to support our work. But tonight we are joined by guest speaker, photographer, and naturalist Colin Tyler. He is volunteering his time and expertise tonight to be here, and we really greatly appreciate that. He is just here on his own time, and so we can't thank him enough. And we're really excited because he'll be discussing Alaska's lynx and some of his encounters that he's had with this elusive cat in the state of Alaska. So really excited to check out some really cool photography and hear some fun stories. But first, I'll be giving a little bit of an introduction to AWA, and then I will hand it off to him in just a moment. So tonight, as I discussed just momentarily, but if you just jumped in, I just want to reiterate that we encourage you to view this in full screen mode. And if you could keep your mute on and your video off, that would be really great for preventing distractions, and helps with the videos. It can help just stream them quite a bit better. And if you have any questions, please use the chat in your screen. Any questions that you get will be addressed at the end of the presentation. About 10 to 15 minutes of the presentation time tonight is dedicated to answering questions that pop up. And most importantly, we just ask that you have fun and that you enjoy the presentation, that you learn something new. And if you have any questions, do feel comfortable to throw them out, because there's no such thing as a bad question. Sometimes my computer takes a minute to scroll on. There we go. So again, thank you so much to our members who are here and to our members that support Alaska Wildlife Alliance. We cannot do the work that we do without you. But AWA has been around doing work in the state since 1978, and we focus on 3 different tiers of work. We have citizen science and education and advocacy. So our citizen science, we've been doing, for example, beluga whale monitoring, long turning an arm, and we specifically, as part of the Alaska Beluga Monitoring Partnership, host the Kenai and Kasilof River sites. And our fall monitoring season ends November 15th. If you want to help out, you can still do that. We also do education events like tabling and wildlife walks, and that top photo is of a volunteer of ours in Juneau holding bear aware signs that are on the electric bus systems. So all sorts of work in that vein. And in advocacy, we do a lot of advocacy to protect the wildlife in the state, as I said earlier on, just to make sure that the wildlife is being scientifically and ethically managed. We recently filed a lawsuit to protect Beaufort Sea polar bears up in the Arctic. And we are also collecting comments for a map the trap proposal to propose setbacks on traps that are being set on trails or very close by in the Mat-Su Basin and just statewide, but our proposal is focused on the Mat-Su. So if you're interested in learning more, that will be on our website. And that will be going to the Board of Game in January. If you're interested in some other work that we're doing, I do encourage you to check out our website. These are just a few featured articles in our news section, but we also have a lot of information that gets proposed in our monthly newsletters. You can sign up for our newsletters on our website, and we don't get spammy because that's pretty gross. We try to keep it as concise as possible with just our monthly newsletters. So you can sign up for those. But if you want to learn more about our polar bear lawsuit or beluga whale monitoring, or even some ways to explore the refuge down on the Kenai Peninsula, then you can check out some news articles there. Some upcoming events. So we have Wildlife Wednesdays, and we have them every week, except for the last week of every month. So we have them on Wednesdays from October through April, except for December. So next month we will be taking a month off. And next week we'll be presenting on the Kenai Peninsula chapters Wildlife Wednesday about salmon. And some past events, if you've missed our Wildlife Wednesdays and want to watch more and catch up on those, they are on our website, YouTube, and social media. And we are also in current events, we are seeking new board members, and we're accepting applications through the 15th. So if you're interested in helping our work and helping us build a very diverse and strong alliance, we really encourage you to become part of our team and apply. And we this summer had wildlife walks, bears, birds, and beers. Colin, our speaker tonight, actually did help lead a wildlife walk this summer, and we had a really great time learning about owls and bears and lynx and moose, everything that you could imagine that is at the Eagle River Nature Center. And his photographs are also going to be in our upcoming calendar for 2022. So if you're interested in purchasing those, they'll be available in December. But fans voted on their favorite photos this year, and they are going to be featured. And if you're interested in purchasing those, they will be on our website. And again, thank you to our members. And if you're interested in supporting us, you can check out our website and become a member there. Just learn more about what we're doing in general. You can go to our website, but also at the bottom, those are some opportunities that you can also help support Alaska's wildlife. So the opportunities are endless. So I'm going to hand it off to Colin. Thank you so much again, Colin, for being here and devoting your time and just volunteering your expertise. And we're really excited to learn more. So I'll hand it off to you.
All right. Thank you, Kelsey. Is my volume okay?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Find share screen. Here we go. A couple things about me. My name's Colin Tyler. I live and work at the Eagle River Nature Center. If you've been out here, perhaps I've met you. I've been here for 7 years. It was supposed to be a winter stay. 7 years later, I'm still here. So beyond that, I am a member of Alaska Wildlife Alliance, and it was largely because of Lynx and Chugach State Park that I became involved with them. Also their work in preserving polar bears in the Arctic. And I'm very much a cat lover, cats of all kinds, domestic, wild cats. I've had the good fortune of photographing wild Bengal tigers in India, along with a spotted leopard. And last month I was in Africa for the first time in Namibia, and we witnessed and photographed lions on a few different occasions, and one leopard as well. So yes, I'm very, very much a cat lover. I see there's at least one other cat lover here. I see a leopard profile pic from somebody there. Hello to the leopard lover. And I should say that all my Lynx encounters have been, and over the years I've had quite a few, and some very close and personal encounters. They've all been chance encounters. I've never baited or called them in. They've all just been random, or I've been tipped off a couple of times as well. There's certainly a debate in the photographic community about calling or baiting in your subjects, so I just wanted to be clear about that. These were all chance encounters that I've had. And the fact that I've had a number of close Lynx encounters, and I know I'm certainly not the only one. However, I like to attribute it, or at least think that it's attributed to my being a cat lover. I could be wrong. But what I've learned about Lynx is they're not always afraid of people. They're not always skittish. They're very elusive. They're very stealthy. If they choose to remain invisible or out of your sight, they will. If they choose to reveal themselves and they determine you're not a threat, they may reveal themselves and be very comfortable around you. And I've had at least 3 or 4 lynx go to sleep right in front of me. So I've had some very close personal encounters. And again, it's more often the case that they don't seem to feel threatened. So let me share my screen here and begin the program. Go. There we go. Okay, so this lynx here in this first slide, we will see again later, is a very large male lynx that I photographed at the Eagle River Nature Center a few years ago. And we'll see him in a number of photos. Probably my best lynx photos, my favorites anywhere, are of this particular lynx. Now, the first lynx I ever saw was in September of 1999. And there we go. This is the first lynx that I ever saw, and it was taken on film, not black and white film. It wasn't that long ago. It was on color slide film. I converted it to black and white just because I like the black and white better in this image. But this is my first ever encounter, my first ever sighting. I was driving the Dalton Highway near the Arctic Circle, a little bit south of the Arctic Circle, near the Yukon River crossing. It was late in the day in September. The sun was behind the hill. And I saw this creature cross the road, very lanky, long legs. At first, I thought it might be a small caribou or something. However, upon closer look, and as we got closer to it, I saw it was a lynx. It ran off into the brush. And I grabbed my camera and tripod and followed it, thinking I wouldn't have any luck. But sure enough, less than 100 feet off the road was this lynx lying down looking at me. And I began photographing. I set up, and this again is in the days of film, which is less forgiving and low light. So if you're a photographer, my settings were, I recall, I was getting 1/30th of a second on a tripod. I had a 500 millimeter manual focus lens and only a 1/30th of a second. But the lynx was so still that I got nice sharp photos. And in fact, this one went to sleep in front of me too. So I was really puzzled that I finally get an encounter with a lynx, and it's so comfortable that it goes to sleep right in front of me. So I got some wonderful images. I was very excited, and it showed no fear. I watched it for 10 or 15 minutes, perhaps, and then a large truck went by, a semi, and that was very loud, shook the ground, and that finally startled it, and it ran off after that. And it wasn't until later, upon looking through my slides, that I noticed that, of course, leave it to humanity to ruin a wonderful moment, but there was a beer can in the foreground, unfortunately. And that can easily be removed digitally, but it was just unfortunate circumstance to have such a beautiful creature, a beautiful encounter, and then find litter in the foreground. Anyway, so that was near the Arctic. You see my cursor up in this area right off the Dalton Highway, a little bit south of the Arctic Circle. Lynx range in Alaska, basically where there's good thick forest and snowshoe hares is where you're going to find lynx. So most of the state in the forested areas, with the exception of the southeast panhandle, especially the southern tip, the southern end of the panhandle, because there are, from what I understand, very few snowshoe hares in that area. Now, somebody out there, if they're from the southeast, might correct me, but that's my understanding. But where you find hares, and again, that's generally in areas of thick undergrowth, where you find snowshoe hares is where you're going to find lynx, because that is their primary food source. And we'll discuss that more here in a little while, and as well as the life cycle of the snowshoe hares. Now, most of you have probably seen this image or the videos on the right here from ADN, Anchorage Daily News. This was from 4 years ago. This family of 8 lynxes, this mother with 7 kittens showed up on their porch. Now that is rare to have that many kittens. However, in a years where there is abundant food supply, i.e. snowshoe hares, they will certainly produce more. So the population, and after a lot of research, I really couldn't find any solid numbers on the numbers of lynx in Alaska, on the overall population. And again, it probably because it fluctuates so much, and they follow the population, the boom and bust population cycle of the snowshoe hares. So it varies greatly. There does seem to be a healthy population when food is abundant, so they seem to be doing well. But it's tough to get an accurate number, an accurate count, because it fluctuates so much. Mating occurs generally in March or early April. Kittens are born about 2 months after that. So they're born in mid to late spring, and average litter is 2 to 4 kittens. But as you see in this image here, in this photo, they can be larger. Again, this is rare. It's also worth noting that females can breed at 1 year of age. So they can breed after their first year. And in years where there is abundant food source, they will reproduce earlier and more often. So again, so much depends on, and they will prey on other species, but primarily they go after the snowshoe hares. Back, here we go. This is in Denali National Park in 2008. This is a yearling. It was born that year. There were a pair of them in the Sanctuary River campground. And I arrived on the camper bus along with a number of others. And as we were walking into the campground, we were notified that there was a pair of lynx. And yes, it was a pair of young lynx. Average, physical characteristics, average adults are 18 to 30 pounds. Males can weigh 40 pounds or more. And the male that I showed you in my first slide, which you'll see again later, was quite large. He was a large, healthy male. I had to think he was at least 40 pounds. 2 to 2.5 feet tall at the shoulder. They have very long legs. If you've ever seen them walking with their legs erect, their hind end is very, very much jacked up because their back legs especially are so long. So they have very long legs, very large paws for traveling on top of the snow to chase their prey, and the long ear tufts. Those characteristics are what really distinguish them from bobcats, which look very similar, but it's the legs, the coloration, the large paws, and especially the tufts on the ears that really distinguish them from the bobcats. And it's also worth noting that the lynx is Alaska's only wild cat. I've heard reports of people seeing mountain lions around Tok or in the southeast. Maybe it'd come over from Canada. I don't know that any of these have been confirmed, but for all intents and purposes, our only wild cat here in Alaska is the lynx. And this was another one of the pair in the Sanctuary River campground in Denali, September of 2008. This was the second night I was there, and I was at my campsite. I was eating dinner. I happened to be at that moment the only person in the campground at the time. And as I was eating, I caught something out of the corner of my eye. And when I looked over, this young lynx had snuck in undetected and was lying next to my tent watching me eat. And this was no more than 12 feet away from me. So again, maybe I'm a cat person. Maybe I've just been lucky with lynx. But that one actually was very curious about me. They are cats after all. They're curious by nature. And you can see in this photo here, it's actually like scenting me. It's trying to investigate who or what I am. It's not growling. It's not snarling. It's just trying to get my scent and getting an idea of what I am. They don't have great sense of smell. They do have very keen eyesight and hearing, and they're very much attracted to visual stimuli. But they do have some sense of smell, obviously, and I think that's what this one was doing here. Again, it snuck in on me. That was one of my greatest wildlife encounters ever, because this thing made its way in to check me out. So I put my plate of food down. I grabbed my camera and followed it for a while. It would stop and look back at me like it did here and let me get some photos, and then it just finally trotted off into the woods. And it's such thick forests that they live in. They're very hard to, number one, find, number two, photograph to get a clear shot, because there's so much undergrowth where they live. Fast forward a few years, actually 10 years, and this is an Eagle River Valley. And this is another young pair of lynx. They were that year's kittens. Look at the difference in coloration here. See how these are much more orange, reddish orange in color. That's their summer coat. When their winter coat starts coming on, they turn much more gray. And that's very, very evident here. Also different camera technology over the span of 10 years, it changes, what have you, but this is largely in part due to the coloration is due to the winter coat. They also have stiffer hairs on their paws, which grow longer in the winter, which gives them more surface area to stay on top of the snow. So they're very adept at staying on top of snow and chasing prey. Again, this was a young pair. They were very curious. I was within probably 20 feet. A friend of mine called and let me know that they were near their house. I went and saw them and observed them for at least an hour. They walked through the neighborhood. They walked up to somebody's house. There's yawning. They are cats. They yawn frequently. But I actually had more trouble photographing this one with its eyes open because it just wanted to close its eyes and rest. And again, another lynx that went to sleep right in front of me. But that's often been the case. And the challenge sometimes can be catching them with their eyes open. It's almost like they're playing the blinking game with you. You can play the blinking game with domestic cats, right? Where you blink back and forth. If you ever get the chance to do it with a wild cat, with a lynx, I recommend it. It can make it challenging to photograph though. Here's a short video. You'll probably, if you turn your volume up, you'll probably hear me talking to this lynx. It's just an iPhone video, so the quality isn't great.
Lynxy. Lynxy. Okay, baby. Yeah, it's okay.
So there you get a good idea of how long their back legs are as well. So I followed them for a bit and they walked over to somebody's house nearby, somebody who was not home. Again, they're curious by nature. And they actually walked up, this one walked up to check out their dog that was on a leash. It was an older dog. It didn't respond much to the lynx's presence. I don't think the lynx had any intention of attacking the dog. It was quite a bit larger than it was. The dog was larger than the lynx was. Again, it's a young lynx. I haven't heard of them being aggressive towards dogs. It may not be unheard of. I haven't heard of any instances of a lynx ever being aggressive towards a human being. Now, it may have happened at some point. There was a story in ADN a few years ago, pretty recently anyway, that a lynx had approached somebody's toddler that was playing in their yard. And so that's a different situation. A toddler is very small, could potentially be prey. Thankfully, nothing happened. But otherwise, I'm not aware of any aggressive encounters with lynx. It would be very, very rare. Now, snowshoe hares, as I mentioned a number of times, they are the lynx's primary food source. Now, they will prey on other animals, certainly ptarmigan, grouse, squirrels, rodents, mice, things like that. I've read that they actually will prey on caribou, I'm guessing small caribou, Dall sheep, or foxes when snowshoe hares and other food sources are scarce. I have to think that's probably very rare, but primarily they feed on snowshoe hares, and the snowshoe hare population goes through a 10-year boom and bust cycle that can vary by a year or two on either end, but it's generally 10 years from peak to peak. And from my observations, I'd say our snowshoe hare population here was peaking 2 years ago. Maybe 3, but 2 years ago. Last year, there was noticeably fewer tracks and hares in general. So I saw a lot less sign last season. And I already started to see a decline in lynx tracks as well last year. So usually the lynx will lag a year or two behind the snowshoe hare population. But when the hares start to drop off, the lynx population will decrease and they will stop producing as much. Now the snowshoe hares, you're probably aware, they turn white in winter. That's their camouflage. They're very quick on their feet. And speaking of their feet, there's a good look at the hind feet of a snowshoe hare, where they get their name. Very large feet shaped like snowshoes, which helps them stay on top of the snow. They turn brown in summer. That's their summer camouflage. They're quite prolific, meaning they can produce 3 to 4 litters per summer when they have a lot of food source. So they stay pretty busy. And again, that's at the peak of their population cycles. But yes, white in the winter, brown in the summer. In recent years, I've noticed when we had a late snowfall or an early melt, it really puts them at a disadvantage. As you can see here, they're quite visible when they've turned white and the snow is gone or the snow hasn't arrived yet, which makes them quite vulnerable. Now, what actually causes the snowshoe hare boom and bust population cycle isn't entirely known. There are a lot of theories. The collective theory seems to be that it's a combination of predation, disease, and over browsing. You see this one here is browsing on some alders or willows, small undergrowth. And I heard recently that the new undergrowth, when it's replaced, is toxic to the hares. It contains a toxin, and that's what kills them off and causes their population to decline. However, I don't think that's entirely accurate. It seems that they're very aware of what to eat and what not to eat. So because of that awareness, they probably wouldn't eat the toxic younger undergrowth. But perhaps if they've browsed most of the other available food, then most of what's left is going to be the new undergrowth, which is toxic. And because they won't eat it, they start to starve off. So it's probably a combination of factors, but it somehow sticks to generally a 10-year cycle with a year or 2 on each end. So this is maybe my favorite Lynx photo ever. I know somebody here is in attendance, has this on their wall in the form of a large canvas print. Thank you again to the Winters. This was taken at the Eagle River Nature Center 2019, March of 2019. It was a breeding pair. And this was probably the largest lynx I've ever seen. Here he's practicing some yoga, a downward cat, if you will. And look at those paws. And that is how they stay on top of the snow to chase their prey. So again, this is another lynx that went to sleep right in front of me, as well as several others. No, really, excuse me, turn up your volume on this one, and hopefully you will hear the mating calls. Again, an iPhone video. This was taken right behind the Nature Center. I heard one of the calls. I wasn't certain what it was until I saw the first and then the second lynx. So at first you're going to hear my friend trying to shush his dog, but then listen closely and hopefully you'll hear their mating calls. Here comes the male. Okay, so hopefully you were able to hear the mating calls. I've got another short video coming up next where you might hear it again. But this is the female. She was the first one to see. And then this is the male, that large male, who was hot on her trail. And he could care less about anyone or anybody or anything around him. He had love on his mind, and there was no deterring him. This is right at the front door of the Nature Center. This is the female here in the foreground. You should hear the mating calls, or actually her her denials, I should say. Okay, hopefully between the two videos there, you heard some of the mating calls. Here's another short video the following day. This is the male, whoops, the male up here, and this is the female. Probably heard the camera shutters there as well. So this was the following day. The previous night here, and again, these are just iPhone videos. I wasn't shooting a lot of video at the time, and these days I'm really shooting and editing a lot more video, which I'm enjoying, but my Lynx videos, unfortunately, are just iPhone videos here. But this was the night before. The next morning, back up, that evening, somebody had driven by and taken a short video and posted it to Facebook, I think on a local wildlife viewing page. The next morning, there were 8 photographers at sunup right outside the center. So word travels quickly. It's also worth noting, whenever I encounter a lynx or something that's really unique, just to avoid alerting too many people and drawing a crowd, I generally don't give the location. I'm very discreet about that. And certainly when it comes to lynx. This is one of the younger kits. So the female there, who the male obviously was ready to mate, she was not ready, and that's what she was telling him. He was very persistent, followed her for days. Actually, seemed to be 2 or 3 weeks. There were a number of sightings of them together. Some people actually saw them mating. He ultimately was successful. But she drove off her kittens there too. She sent the kittens down the road. There's one of the kittens right there. So when it came time to mate, she seemed to set them free. And again, lynx can mate within their first year. So these kittens could soon be mating and reproducing as well, as long as there's abundant food source. That is the male right there, one of my favorite poses. Again, he was almost oblivious to anyone or anything but that female lynx. So much so that this is the front of the parking lot here, you might recognize. Look under this tree right here. There's the female under the spruce tree. Later that day, the ranger was out, and he actually used his sirens to scare them away from the road, because they were right at the end of the road. It was dangerous for them, and drawing quite a crowd, as you can imagine. Bring that back. You might hear that call there as well. Right there. So eventually they were shooed off the road, but they hung around the center for a number of days in the trails, and there were multiple sightings. I saw the male one more time. I was on the larger viewing deck, the salmon viewing deck, and I was photographing both trumpeter swans and a bull moose. And I heard something running behind me, and I thought, great, somebody's dog is off leash and it's going to ruin my opportunity. Well, I turned around, and this was the male lynx. He ran across the deck, jumped off the far end and off into the woods. I could hear the female calling further out. So he was on her trail once again. The lynx tracks, they're very, in my opinion, very identifiable. They're very distinct. They have a distinct pattern. Usually, unless they're running, it's a very tight pattern, either pairs, 2 pairs on either side, or very close together. very much in unison, symmetrical, and evenly distanced. Again, they have a distinct, very round shape versus a dog's print. They're very, very round, and you will not see their claws unless they're stalking prey. Their claws retract like most cats. So a very round tracks very close together and no claws is likely a lynx track. Here you can see some on the river. They're a few days old, right next to another set that could be maybe a week or two old. They're snowed over right here. Again, they're walking very close together. These are a little more fresh. These are on the river as well. And there you can see that the pairs of tracks evenly spread. So they're very distinct in my opinion. Now, I do have to mention, since we're discussing lynx, illegal trapping and snaring, which has been an issue in recent years. It was no secret that the lynx population was high. There were numerous sightings. Sightings were quite common in recent years. Last year, not quite as much, but it was no secret that the population was high. And so there were people who took advantage of that situation. And there was a lot of illegal snaring going on here in Eagle River Valley, at least some illegal sets that I was aware of in some of the neighborhoods down the road from the nature center, along the river further down. So I was very vigilant, and I am very vigilant every year, especially in the winter when I'm out on my skis on the river, on the trails, myself as well as our trail crew. If we notice tracks going into the woods, it looks somewhat suspicious, we're going to investigate. And this was an instance where I was skiing. I had been by there the afternoon prior, and the following day there was a fresh set of snowshoe tracks, human snowshoes, not snowshoe hair. A fresh set of snowshoe tracks that went right down the edge of the river and into the woods. And they seemed to be on a mission, not just a leisurely walk, a snowshoe walk in the woods, if you will. So I followed them, and sure enough, I found the first of 2 illegal snare sets. And you can see the snares here, and I've got several photos. And that is a snowshoe hair foot that they're using for baits tied to a stick in the middle. And what they had done is cut down a bunch of alders and basically created a border around this bait and left openings large enough for a lynx to fit through, just large enough for it to fit through, with a snare in each opening. This was the first of 2 sets. Further down the river was the second set, which had even more snares. There were 4 or 6, I believe, in this one. It was a larger fenced-in area with the alders. Again, they created this border with the alders, leaving openings just wide enough for a lynx to get through, and a snare in each one. Now, I want to make it clear that I'm not taking a stance here against legal or ethical hunting, trapping. What I'm pointing out here is certainly illegal behavior. There was no open season on lynx that year. And even with the season that was opened in Chugach State Park last year, it did not include Eagle River Valley, but regardless, it was prior to the emergency opening of the lynx season. A few ways to identify an illegal set. First of all, if you know it's in an area where hunting and trapping is not allowed, which that was the case here. Second, there was no tag or ID marking the set. It's my understanding, and trapping laws vary, they fluctuate throughout the state year to year, but it's my understanding that they generally have to be ID'd with the trapper's name. That could have changed in recent years, but that's my understanding. So if there's no tag or identification, it could very well be an illegal set, or using an entire small game animal for bait. I did look through the laws, and yes, you can use parts of small game animals that have been harvested as bait, but what cannot be salvaged. And if you look here closely, this is pretty much the rest of the snowshoe hair. The other set had the 1 foot, the rest of it was here. So these guys probably just shot this hair and cut it up and used the whole thing for bait. So that would have been illegal in itself right there. Now, you are not supposed to tamper with traps or snares. So if you do encounter something and you're pretty certain it's in an illegal area or illegally set, or you're not certain, best thing to do, take photos, take a pin drop with your phone, and contact, if it's in a park, state park or national park, contact the ranger's office. Or if it's not in a park, you could contact the Alaska Wildlife Troopers and go from there. But turn it over to law enforcement, let them handle it, and leave it intact for them to document. So again, these snares, because I had skied by this area the day before and these snowshoe tracks were not there, they were not even out 24 hours. They were found and removed. I called the rangers, they removed them right away. And in that amount of time, there's still enough human scent present that a lynx or even a coyote probably wouldn't approach it. But anyway, they were not out very long at all, less than 24 hours. Another downfall or another potential tragedy here would be somebody's domestic dog coming, smelling the bait, coming to investigate, and then getting caught in the snare. And if you're not prepared, those snares can be very difficult to loosen up. They're designed to lock and not reopen. So if you don't have a wire cutter or something to remove them, it could be a really bad situation. So if you have a dog, you might want to keep that in mind and travel with a Leatherman or some type of wire cutter just in case. Here we go. So this was just over a year ago, last October, a year ago in October, near the Nature Center. And I started out on the trail one morning, and a man was walking two huskies. Thankfully, they were both leashed. If you happen to be watching today, I didn't catch your name, but thank you very much, because he alerted me to a family of lynx a little ways down the trail. He said they ran, his dogs barked, they ran, the kittens went in the tree, but then he left. I went back and I found the tracks. The lynx were gone, but I found the tracks. I tracked them for about a half a mile to where they had gone into an area of thick, dense alders, and I didn't see any tracks coming out of there. So I figured they're probably still in this vicinity. So I poked around a few minutes and I heard something, and then I saw a little movement, and it was a snowshoe hare. And immediately on the snowshoe hare's trail was the mother lynx. And from what I heard from the sounds and the squeals, it sounded like she probably caught the hare and probably fed it to the kittens. Just a short video.
Bummer. Pretty kitty. Pretty kitty.
See, there's Mama right there. Beautiful, beautiful cat. And she had two kittens. These were the first kittens I ever saw. And these are 5 to 6 months old at this stage, but they were a little more skittish of me. But the mother really showed no fear. She went to sleep within 15 feet of me. I was very close, as you can see there. And I was with her for close to 3 hours. And she hardly moved a muscle. She mostly slept. At one point, I even put my camera gear down, I bowed my head, and I went into a full namaste with my eyes closed for about 10 minutes. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. I didn't open my eyes for 10 minutes. I was facing her. I lifted my head, opened my eyes, and she was still there. She hadn't moved. I wanted to make it very clear that I was no threat. So she was very comfortable with me. There's one of the kittens peering through the brush and wasn't sure what to think of me. And there's the mother right there. Beautiful, beautiful cat. And there's one of the babies cuddling with her. And now just a few days after this, I had another very lucky encounter, again in Eagle River Valley. And this was a mother with 4 kittens, and they were crossing the river. And it appeared to be the first time they'd ever crossed a frozen river. They were very timid. And so I focused on this baby here in the background, and it stopped right at the river's edge. Wasn't sure if or where to go. And right when I went to press the shutter, its sibling ran across the frame here. And that one made it across first. Eventually, they all made it across. Again, probably their first time crossing a frozen river. They weren't sure what to think. They are excellent swimmers, by the way. They're very good swimmers. They rarely catch fish. They've been known to eat fish, but they rarely actually catch fish, but they are very good swimmers. And this one took a leap of faith right at the end over the darker, thinner ice and eventually made it to safety. They all four made it across to meet their mom. So within a week span there, I saw 2 different lynx families. It was a very good week for lynx, which I have to say are probably my favorite subject. Cats in general, wild cats, but there's something really unique and special about lynx. And I've had so many wonderful encounters with them, but they've really become my favorite. Now, sightings are hit and miss. It's a matter of timing and luck, like everything. But I've had such great encounters that they really probably are my favorite subject. So that's my last slide. If you have any comments, questions, we can go ahead and open up the floor for that.
Thank you, Colin. This is Kelsey. Beautiful presentation, and your photographs are really just very capturing. I haven't seen a lynx yet since being up in Alaska, but I am looking forward to the day where I do. Yeah, so thank you. This is wonderful. If anybody has questions, do throw them into the chat and we'll address them at this point. We are to the Q&A session. I have a question maybe to just start off, Colin, and it's kind of related to lynx, but mostly in general with your experience with all wildcats. I know you've captured so many across the globe, but is there one in particular that you have not come across yet, or that has eluded you, or that's on your bucket list to photograph?
A cat subject, you're saying?
Yes.
Well, my recent trip to Namibia, we did not see any cheetahs or male lions. So I'd certainly love to see those hopefully next year. But I think the ultimate species for me, and I really want to go back to India and photograph tigers again, because that was wonderful. But the ultimate for me would be snow leopard.
Very nice.
So northern India, Nepal, in the Himalayan region. And they're starting to be more frequent sightings there too, more consistent. So I'm hoping in the next few years I will get that opportunity to go back to India, go to northern India, and with any luck, photograph snow leopards.
That would be incredible. That's like planet Earth stuff. That would be super cool. All right, so we have a couple of questions in the chat as well. Is there a time of day when lynx are most active?
So they're primarily nocturnal, which makes it, again, difficult to see them because they're very elusive, they're very quiet and stealthy, and they're mostly nocturnal. So that being said, I've seen them in the daytime on numerous occasions. As you can see, these photos were all taken during the daytime. So they can be active. They're more visible or easier to spot in winter just because they stand out more and you can track them more easily. You can easily find their tracks in winter. So I'd say winter time in general is better when there's available snow, but it's really hit and miss. And again, most sightings are if you're out at night or driving, it's where you're probably going to see them most often. But where you find snowshoe hares is where you're going to find lynx. It's that simple.
Great. I love this next question. Has it been determined what function the tuft of hair is at the tip of the ears?
Yes, I believe it's sensory, for actually feeling, detecting things. Yes. If I had a minute to Google, I could probably find a more thorough answer on that. But the short answer is yes, they do serve a sensory purpose.
Very nice. I wonder what the difference would be between them and like a bobcat that doesn't so much have that tuft.
The bobcats have very short ones and may not be as significant to their sensory organs or their sense of what have you, feeling, hearing, detecting.
Cool. Yeah, the things we have yet to learn. How regional are snowshoe hare population cycles so that lynx in eastern Canada could be bustling while those in Alaska are booming, and vice versa?
I've gathered it's very similar across North America. Like it's the wave kind of comes and goes together. I'm sure there's some variance. Don't quote me on that. But the research that I found, it sounds like it's pretty consistent across the continent. But I'm guessing there is some fluctuation from east to west. So, good question though, because it seems like it might move more in a wave from east to west, but it's from what I gathered, it seems to generally happen at the same time.
Wonderful. Any information about the prevalence of roadkills? I'm assuming.
Yeah, it happens. I want to see. I've seen one lynx that was hit by a car, one roadkill. It certainly happens, but it's pretty rare. They're very stealthy. So it's unlikely that they would be hit by a car because they're pretty aware of their surroundings and very stealthy, very fast.
Excellent. Do bobcats and lynx have overlapping ranges?
Yes, they certainly do, because lynx are present in the lower 48, the northern tier states, generally the far, far north, where bobcats are also present. So certainly they do, their habitat zones do cross. I've never heard or read of interspecies breeding. I guess it's possible, you know, polar bears and brown bears have. Lions and tigers have, because there are no tigers in Africa, but there are Asiatic lions. And it has happened in India and Asia where tigers and leopards have interbred. So it's possible, but I'm not aware that lynx and bobcats have.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, what would you call it?
Bob Lynx.
About that. We'll think about that.
I'll work on the title.
Okay.
When I get to name the species, it'll be improved.
We get to name it.
That's right. Do lynx scent mark a territory? How big is the territory? And do males wander? Do females stay put?
Good questions. My guess is they do scent mark when they're mating. I have been in areas where the smell of lynx urine was very strong, very noticeable. And, you know, cat urine in general is pretty distinct. So my guess is that they do, like other wild cats, scent mark. Their home range varies, and that depends mostly on local food supply. So they can have a range that's 5 square miles up to 100 square miles. Lynx that have been tagged in Alaska have shown up in the Northwest Territories. So they traveled, you know, a couple thousand miles, probably in search of food. So when food is scarce, they're going to travel more. When food is abundant, they don't need to. Male lynx probably have a larger range. They're generally solitary animals. They only travel in pairs when they're mating. Otherwise, they're solitary. When a mother's raising its young, they'll stick together. And as I've shown here on at least a couple different occasions, the siblings will often travel together after they leave their mother, after their mother pushes them out after their first year. So siblings will sometimes stick together. Otherwise, they're solitary creatures. The range varies depending on food supply. And the lynx that I've photographed here at the Nature Center, I've seen on people's yard and webcams a few miles down the road. And they seem to have a circuit. They'll show up here, they'll show up there a few days later in a very small circuit. That's in recent years when food was abundant. So hopefully that answered all the questions there in that last series anyway.
I believe so. I think there's just do females stay put, but it sounds like with kittens, they tend to try if they can.
Stay put?
Yeah, so I think like if they have a territory or not, that is really
sure.
expansive, but
they certainly have their home range, their home territory, probably smaller than the males, and again, depending largely on the available food.
Yeah, that makes sense. Great. Do lynx have counterparts in Eastern Russia?
There are European lynx, Iberian lynx in Spain. They're a little different than our lynx. So Eastern Russia, Probably they may have the same species that we have. That's a good question. I couldn't say for sure, but Europe and parts of Asia do have different species of lynx than we have. But it kind of makes sense that the same species we have would be maybe in the Kamchatka Peninsula or Eastern Russia. We have a lot of the same species.
Wow, that's super interesting. That is, unless you got any direct questions, Colin, that's the last I can see here, unless folks have some last questions they want to throw in. Otherwise, I think we reached the end of what I can see. So yeah, I just want to say thank you so much. We're ending right in time. So thank you for everyone who was in attendance. Thank you, Colin, so much for volunteering your time to be here. I know I said it before, but you are here for free. And so we really appreciate you sharing all your knowledge, and you've had some pretty incredible encounters that would just be life-changing to most. So how cool you've had so many, but really enjoyed your conversation, and you're getting a bunch of kudos in the chat. It's flooding. Throw it in there, spread some love, everyone. Thank you. And I will stop the recording now.